What's going on, everyone? It's Gematria Gaming back at it again. It is Saturday, October 22nd, and yeah, just wanted to have a quick discussion with you guys about some language that is used in the Bible that a lot of people that are futurists or even post millennialists would use as a means of trying to say that the world is going to end. That's what the Bible's about, etc., etc. This is stuff that people that been Christians for decades still believe in, and I think it's what gives it really kind of like a bad. Do I want to say a bad connotation? Maybe to what people kind of assume we're talking about here when we're talking about uh, just I don't know, just in general, I guess like religion in general, right? People, it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. Um, I was on, I was actually on called in TFR on Gematria Effect News 25 this past Wednesday, and people get big mad when you're kind of like, hey, they were talking about like Adam and Eve and how, oh, when they ate from the tree of life and or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, them dying but they didn't die and this and that, and you know it, it just had to kind of explain to them, well, that's what you're thinking is wrong because it's more of a spiritual death that Adam and Eve um, experience, right? But then you also have a oh, what do I want to say? A different kind of way of looking at it as well. Whereas time being irrelevant to God too. But anyway, yeah. So it's just kind of funny. There was some people that got a little mad about the fact that that I was calling in and trying to just trying to set the record straight. I guess I would say I wasn't even trying to be rude necessarily. I'm just like, hey, what you think is not actually 100% the reality of the situation, and it just comes down to trying to like give the knowledge to people, spread the knowledge with people, because the more that we can all get on the same page as Christians, the stronger Christianity becomes. There's no need for us to be, uh, you know, divided and fractured amongst all these different, um, you know, whatever the word you want to use is. Okay, I know I'm not huge into the literal like naming quote unquote of anything. Um, what kind of sect of Christianity you want to belong to. That's not. I think that's kind of a toxic trait of the modern day churches, ecclesia, whatever. But um, yeah, so I'm still just going to continue to do what I do. I had some people attack my character, I believe unjustly, just based on like the name of my YouTube channel. They're like, "Oh, Gematria Gaming. You don't even do Gematria. You did da da da." I'm like, okay, well, if you go back and look at my old videos, because like I do have old videos on my channel that you can go back and look at. This was originally intentioned to be a gaming channel where I would do Gematria decodes and then do some video game playing, right? Well, as time went on, I realized that, you know what, Gematria is great for knowing who the enemy is, but at this point, we know who the enemy is, so for me, I just don't find much relevance in Gematria anymore. I do believe that it's a important thing to know, because once you know the knowledge of it, then there's a lot less stuff in the world that you care about, if that makes sense. Like this is all, this just goes to show how much everything is a rat race, So I don't really feel like getting pulled into the political throes of the Jesuits. I don't really feel like caring about the, you know, fake news stories and the, it's all we're all just being led to keep our attention off of things that matter. I think that's what it all comes down to. Whether it's like the Queen's death or Alex Jones's trial or the economies, this and that. Look, that stuff's all important. You got to know it. But once you realize that's all kind of like BS and it's just a bunch of rituals that are ran by people that are not good people, I don't really want to give my attention to it. You know what I mean? I don't really want to give my energy to it. Like I'll acknowledge it for what it is, and I'll be like, okay, um, this is the world we live in, and it's nothing new. You know what I mean? There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to stuff like that. Bad people doing bad things for their own gain, for possibly they worship different gods than us, even though they would tell us they would lie, and say, oh yeah, I believe in God. Oh, okay, what God? You know what I mean? Um, it's easy to say, yeah, you believe in God when you're not specifying who your God is, right? Um, but anyway, so outside of that tangent, what I wanted to talk about today is covenantal language, right? So a lot of times people will hear like, well, so they read the Bible and people are under the assumption that the Bible, at the end of the Bible, it predicts the end of the world, right? And everything gets destroyed and whatever. So, I don't know if it has to be said for the millionth time or not, but I do feel the need to say that it's not what I subscribe to. I did before. I was a futurist before, but reading Scripture, understanding Scripture, doing my due diligence with Scripture, start to realize that there's a meaning that is being missed with these words like heavens and earth passing away, the sun, moon, and stars, things that are used in biblical reference that people take as meaning like the literal sense of like the heavens and the earth and everything. So just kind of to jump into it, there's some really good examples of um, like in the Old Testament, referencing these kinds of things where um, that kind of apocalyptic language, quote unquote, is used, and it didn't actually necessarily mean the end of the world, right? Because time went on. Um, but yeah, as far as for like I think a big one that people go to is Matthew 24:29-30. So let's just kind of look at this here. We're going to go through this stuff and we'll make sense of it. All right. So we'll pull up the Berean Study Bible. And this is Jesus talking. This is an Olivet Discourse, right? So speaking to the disciples, he's telling them what's going to happen when he returns. So here's just to give you the general rundown of it. So futurists believe that what Jesus is talking about here is going to happen. Like it hasn't happened yet, right? Like it's still yet to happen, and we're all waiting for the Great Tribulation, and we're waiting for Jesus to come back. Um, there's I think futurism and postmillennialism makes up a large portion of Christianity. However, preterism, which is what I proclaim to be a full preterist, right? Um, it it gives the it gives this text, this passage. Yes, it was speaking of the future, but not that far into the future where it hasn't happened yet, right? This all culminates with it begins with the Judean War, right? And that lasts 3.5 years, and then culminates in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple, right? Um, so let's read this here. So Verse 29 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, all right, so those days, quote unquote, people think, oh, okay, the Great Tribulation, all right, well, that already happened, but don't worry, we can handle that as well. But it says, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and all the powers of the heavens will be shaken, right? At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth, again, that word, earth is ges. Really, it means that area, that region, will mourn. Now, let me stop it right here too and ask you guys something. So, a lot of times people that are futurists are like, well, yeah. So that means that everyone on Earth is going to mourn because they're going to see the Son of Man, the sign of God, of Christ in the sky, right? I'm like, okay, you know, I can understand that. That's what everyone believes. A lot of Christians, a lot of theists believe that. But here's the problem with all that. When it says all the tribes of the earth, right? Like a clan, or I guess like a race, yeah. But if we look at it like as an actual clan or tribe, I'm like, guys, there's not a lot of tribes or clans around anymore. We're societies now. You know what I mean? And by nature, guys, tribes and clans are very intersecular. Like that's what makes societies different, right? So even at the time of like 70 AD, you could argue that in the area, right, in the region of Judea or Israel, there was a lot of different types of people, a lot of different cultures, but everyone would still be kind of like brought in, like kind of like sectioned out into specific clans or tribes, right? Um, Especially so more like if we're talking in reference to the actual original tribes of Israel, like the 12 tribes. Um, but as time has gone on, like societies have commingled so much that you can't, like there's very few places where you'd be like, yeah, that's a tribe of people or a clan of people. Like when we think that, we think of like in the middle of the Amazon, uncontacted tribes. Like, you know what I mean? So, context really matters on this, and I think that it's referencing, it's not referencing like some crazy far in the future timeline. It's referencing pretty close to when these words were spoken. Um, so they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, this phrase here, coming on the clouds, right? So, oops. Coming on the clouds of heaven, that's Old Testament apocalyptic language. All right? And we'll go into that too, but so just this is referencing like how God's presence would be perceived right on earth, coming down in the clouds. And so really this is talking about judgment, okay? And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So we also talked about this in a previous stream, but like when it says like from one end of the heavens to the other, that again is more kind of like apocalyptic language. Um, Same with like the four winds. It's mainly talking about from one end of the region in the Middle East to the other. Um, and at this point, you've got to realize where the destruction of the temple appeared in, right? Like where did it happen? It happened in Jerusalem. So there's a lot to be said about like when he's talking about from one end of the heavens to the other, the four winds. What area is he really talking about? Is he really talking about the entirety of the earth, or is he talking about in that region in specific, right? Um, so there's there's a lot of things that like go into the you know apocalyptic language or decreation language of Matthew. So we're talking tribulations, distress, the abomination of desolation, the Roman armies that surrounded Jerusalem, right? The wrath being brought upon the Yahudim, all the Christians that fled from Judea, um, that were believers and knew, oh, okay, the time is now. We're gonna get out of here. Um, so there's definitely a lot of things that people will, I guess they'll try and take this into a context of, like I said, meaning, oh, this is happening, in the future, and all these things are gonna be seen by everybody on Earth, but really not what it means. So, um, this is really talking about like that 3.5 year period between AD 67 and AD 70, right? Um, because the Judean War started in 67, lasted 3.5 years, and like I said, it culminated in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple. So there's not a gap of a bunch of time here, because it says immediately after the tribulation of those days. So you have to realize that he's talking like rapid succession, like this is what's going to happen, right? Now, God's coming, um, like on the clouds of heaven, right? So it says the Son of Man is going to be coming in the clouds of heaven. And like stars falling from heaven, the stars will fall from the sky, the sun is darkened, the moon will not give its light. This is all used elsewhere in the Bible, and it's all metaphorical or symbolic language that refers to like the judgment of nations that would be happening in those time frames of when they're said, when those references are brought up. It's not talking about like I said, the physical destruction of the planet, because those events had came and went, and yet here we still are today. So I want to talk to you guys about the fall of Babylon that shows up in Isaiah 13, right? So let's just look at this here. So this is the burden against Babylon that Isaiah, son of Amoz, received. Raise a banner on a barren hilltop, call aloud to them, wave your hand that they may enter the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones, I have even summoned my warriors to execute my wrath. Okay, well, this is what God's saying, right? So this is the prophet Isaiah speaking, God speaking through him, letting him know, hey, Babylon, this is what's going to happen to you, right? So, and exult in my triumph. Listen, a tumult on the mountains, like that of a great multitude. Listen, an uproar among the kingdoms, like nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts is mobilizing an army for war. They are coming from faraway lands, from the ends of the heavens, right? So that brings us right back to Matthew, right? How it said that, from the ends of the heavens. The Lord and the weapons of his wrath to destroy the whole country. Okay? Now, and again, realize he's speaking, in regards to Babylon, because he's referencing Babylon right here, right? This is the burden against Babylon. So you can't, like, some people be like, oh, Babylon must be talking about the whore of Babylon, and that's America. Like, no, no, it's not. Okay, he's literally this. We're speaking in the time frame of the Assyrian and Babylonian war that was waging against Jerusalem, or the kingdom of Judah and Israel, the northern kingdom of Israel, southern kingdom of Judea. Wail, for the day of the Lord is near; it will come as destruction from the Almighty. Right? So the day of the Lord is near. Okay, so how, like, again, how long ago was Isaiah written? Like, how long ago did this prophecy, right? A long time ago. So when he says the day of the Lord is near, he's talking about the day of the Lord for Babylon. We're not even talking about 70 AD, right? We're talking about for Babylon itself. Um, and then again, in verse 9, behold, the day of the Lord is coming, cruel with fury and burning anger, to make the earth a desolation and to destroy the sinners within it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. I mean, guys, this is literally like Matthew 24 is paralleling this exact verse. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Like, so we know that this is a specific language of the prophets of the Old Testament. It's apocalyptic language, right? I will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity. I will end the haughtiness of the arrogant and lay low the pride of the ruthless. I will make man scarcer than pure gold and mankind rarer than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken from its place, and the wrath of the Lord of hosts on the day of his burning anger, right? Or will be shaken from its place at the wrath on the day of his burning anger. So again, you know, you have to read this and realize like this is very strong language. It's very powerful language, but it's not referring to the actual literal heavens trembling and the earth shaken from its place and the wrath of everyone being like in the entire world being taken out. Right? So their infants will be dashed to pieces before their eyes, their houses will be looted, and their wives will be ravished. Behold, I will stir up against them the Medes, who have no regard for silver and no desire for gold. Their bows will dash young men to pieces. They will have no mercy on the fruit of the womb, and they will not look with pity on the children. So again, okay, the Medes, like Medo-Persia, like you know what I'm saying? So we've got Babylon and Medo-Persia literally specifically being referenced here. So you can't take this any other way. You can't be like, oh, nope, this is talking about us in the future. This is going to happen to us. Like, no, it's not. And that day already came and went. And the heavens are still here, right? Like the sky is still above. The earth is still below us. So, again, and look at this even, right? So terror, pain, and anguish will seize them. They will writhe like a woman in labor. Well, we know that this is referenced as well, right? The birthing pains. These are the beginning of birthing pains. Like, this is all just very symbolic language. It's beautiful. I think it's very beautiful in the way that it's written. I think it's beautiful in the way that it's, juxtaposed to us. But we have to realize what it is, and it's not talking about the end of the earth then, because the Medo-Persians went and kicked the Babylonians' asses and then went and kicked Jerusalem's ass too, but we're still here. So let's also look about the coming of Egypt being judged, and that's in Ezekiel 30, right? So Ezekiel 30. So this is a lament for Egypt, right? So again, the word of the Lord came to me saying, Son of man, prophesy and declare that this is what the Lord God says. Wail, alas, for that day, for the day is near. The day of the Lord is near. It will be a day of clouds, a time of doom for the nations. A sword will come against Egypt, and there will be anguish in Cush when the slain fall in Egypt. Its wealth is taken away, and its foundations are torn down. Cush, Put, and Lud, and all the various peoples, as well as Libya and the men of the covenant land, will fall with Egypt by the sword. For this is what the Lord says. The allies of Egypt will fall, and her proud strength will collapse. From Migdol to Sin, they will fall by the sword within her. They will be desolate among desolate lands, and their cities will lie among ruined cities. They will know that I am the Lord who, when I set fire to Egypt and all her helpers are shattered. On that day, the messengers will go out from me in ships to frighten Cush out of complacency. Anguish will come upon them on the day of Egypt's doom, for it is indeed coming. So, again, I mean, this is speaking in regards to what was happening during the time of Ezekiel 30. Well, okay, so let's just take a look and see the timeline for Ezekiel. All right, so if we go down here, we can see that Ezekiel 30 was a time that happened in 586 BC, okay? So let's look at the history of war in Egypt. Okay, we're going to go back in time. Oops. Oh, the Crusades. Maybe we should look at ancient Egypt. Excuse me. Okay, so yeah, no. Here we go. Ancient Egyptian wars. Navigating the millennia of bloodshed. Da da da. Okay, we're in 2000 BC. We got to move up a little bit. Yeah, so look, okay. I mean, you can read here and see, um, like when it was probably when the Greeks came in to to they took over Egypt. So actually, let's see the Greek-Egypt War. Yeah, the Greeks in Egypt. Okay. So speaking of Alexander the Great conquering Egypt, right? Uh, and this was in 323 BC. So I mean, yeah, I would imagine that this is what it was. I'm not 100% sure, but like you can see that there is something being prophesied here, right? About Egypt and what ended up happening to Egypt. The Greeks came in and kicked their asses, and the Romans came in and kicked their asses, and the Romans had occupation in Egypt during 70 AD. So, I mean, this isn't talking about things that are far into the future. You know what I mean? This is just talking about like, hey, this is they're prophesying about, um, a coming uh, tribulation, right? I mean, he said, "For the day is near, the day of the Lord is near." Not that it's thousands of years into the future, right? Um, and again, I'm not a historian, so I mean, but I can guarantee that there's something to this, hearkening to what was going to come from Greece, um, and because that's all very pertinent to then what happened in the Judean Wars. Um, so let's also take a look at Isaiah 34 for more, apocalyptic language. So we have judgment on the nations, judgment on Edom, and we could see here, judgment on the nations. So come near, O nations, to listen. Pay attention, O peoples. Let the earth hear, and all that fills it. the world and all that springs from it. The Lord is angry with all the nations and furious with all their armies. He will devote them to destruction. He will give them over to slaughter. Their slain will be left unburied, and the stench of their corpses will rise. The mountains will flow with their blood. All the stars of heaven will be dissolved. The skies will be rolled up like a scroll, and all their stars will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like foliage from the fig tree. So again, this is apocalyptic language, right? When my sword has drunk its fill in the heavens, again, my sword, that's talking about judgment, right? So when he speaks of my sword, that's that's always in reference to bringing judgment upon peoples. Then it will come down upon Edom, upon the people I have devoted to destruction. The sword of the Lord is bathed in blood. It drips with fat, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah, a great slaughter in the land of Edom. And the wild oxen will fall with them, the young bulls with the strong ones. Their land will be drenched with blood, and their soil will be soaked with fat. For the Lord has a day of vengeance, a year of recompensance for the cause of Zion. From Edom's streams will be turned, Edom's streams will be turned to tar, and her soil to sulfur. Her land will become a blazing pitch. It will not be quenched day or night. Its smoke will ascend forever. From generation to generation it will lie desolate. No one will ever again pass through it. The desert owl and screech owl will possess it, and the great owl and raven will dwell in it. So, again, this is talking about Edom, right? So, where is Edom? So, Edom, you can see here, was south of Judea, right? So, ancient Egyptian was an ancient kingdom in Transjordan located between Moab to the northeast and Arabah to the west and the Arabian Desert to the south and east. Most of its former territory is now divided between present-day southern Israel and Jordan. Edom appears in written sources relating to the late Bronze Age and the Iron Age in the Levant. So, the Edomites were pushed out of their territory, and they settled during the Persian period in the area comprising of the southern hills of Judea down to the area north of Beersheba. The people appear under a Greek form of their old name as Eumedians or Idumeans, and their new territory was called Idumea, a term that was used in the Hellenistic and Roman periods, also mentioned in the New Testament. During the 2nd century BC, the Edomites were forcibly converted to Judaism by the Hasmoneans and were incorporated into the Jewish nation. Edom and Idumea are two related but distinct terms. They relate to historically contiguous population, but to two separate, if adjacent, territories which the Edomites slash Idumeans occupied in different periods of their history. So, again, look at this. So, the Edomites first established a kingdom, Edom, in the southern area of modern-day Jordan, and later migrated to the southern parts of the kingdom of Judah, or Idumea, modern-day Mount Hebron, when Judea was first weakened and then destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BC. Okay, so and then like if you read up on the history of it, guys, it's telling you like what's happening. You had the Maccabean revolt, right? So during the revolt of the Maccabees against the Seleucid kingdom in the early 2nd century BC, which we're not going to go into Second Maccabees because that's not even that's not biblical. So I mean, this all has history to it, and yes, it's got a lot of like apocalyptic language as well. You know what I mean? Like, is the soil really turned to sulfur? Is the land still on fire and the smoke is ending up forever? Well, no, but it might be lying desolate. I mean, if we look at modern-day Edom, okay, if we know where it's at, like geographically speaking, right, the kingdom of Edom being south of the Dead Sea. I mean, we can kind of look and see there's not a whole lot going on over here, right? I mean, I guess there's some places, there's some cities, but not a whole lot. I mean, look at it. It's mainly just desolate desert. You know what I mean? So, I mean, God didn't lie about that. I mean, look at this. You know what I mean? It's just giant desert. Like literally, as far as the eye can see, just dunes. That's all it is. And there's some very small, um, like cities or towns, whatever you want to say, more north of the Dead Sea. You know what I mean? But I mean, yeah, like there's nothing. There's not thriving cities over here. I mean, like literally, it looks like there's just tiny little places, and then as opposed to like you go over to Jerusalem and into Israel and look at how much more populous it is out here, right? So again, he kept good on his promise. He didn't lie about what this nation was going to be or what that area was going to be. There's nothingness out there. I mean, look, even out most of it out here is just nothingness. But we have to realize like you know, what that apocalyptic language was really discussing, right? What it was talking about. Um, and again, you know, even more in Haggai, okay, 2:6. The coming glory of God's house, right? So it says here, for this is what the Lord of hosts says: once more, in a little while, I will shake the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land. I will shake all the nations, and they will come with all their treasures, and I will fill this house with glory, says the Lord of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, declares the Lord of hosts. The latter glory of this house will be greater than the former, says the Lord of hosts. And in this place I'll provide peace, declares the Lord of hosts. So, funnily enough, at the very beginning of this, he does denote once more. So, like, I've done it before, I'll do it again. The heavens and the earth are going to shake. The dry land and the sea is going to shake. So, again, it's apocalyptic language, right? There's also, oh my gosh, just how many judgments that came upon Judah and Yisrael, right? I mean, seriously, we're going to go into this so you guys can actually understand, how important this stuff is to realize, like, what this kind of covenantal language or apocalyptic language really means. So in Isaiah 13, again, we said the day of the Lord is coming, cruel with fury and burning anger, to make the earth a desolation and to destroy the sinners within it. Right? For the stars of the heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The rising sun will be darkened. The moon will not give its light. So, okay, we know that, right? Now let's talk about Isaiah 19. Again, talking about Egypt, right? This is the burden against Egypt, right? The Lord rides on a swift cloud. He is coming to Egypt. The idols of Egypt will tremble before him, and the hearts of the Egyptians will melt within them, right? And then again in 34. All the stars of heaven will be dissolved. The skies will be rolled up like a scroll, and all their stars will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like foliage from the fig tree. We just went over that again, right? And again, one more time, it could be said in Ezekiel 32. So just to kind of retouch on it, right? When I extinguish you, I will cover the heavens and darken their stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give its light. All the shining lights in the heavens I will darken over you, and will bring darkness upon your land. Again, it's declares the Lord, right? So again, that's apocalyptic language, right? Um, let's talk about Amos 5. 21 to 22. So I despise your feasts. I cannot stand the stench of your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. For your peace offerings of fattened cattle, I have no regard. Um, so again, he's you know saying, hey, I'm sick of your offerings, just like he says in Isaiah 111 as well. He hates the solemn assemblies. That's like the judgment is coming upon these people. And then Zephaniah 1:7. So be silent in the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is near. Indeed, the Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated his guests. On the day of the Lord's sacrifice, I will punish the princes, the sons of the king, and all who are dressed in foreign apparel. On that day, I will punish all who leap over the threshold, who fill the house of their master with violence and deceit. On that day, declares the Lord, a cry will go up from the fish gates, a wail from the second district, and a loud crashing from the hills. Wail, O dwellers of the hollow, for all your merchants will be silenced, all who weigh out silver will be cut off. At that time I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish the men settled in complacency, who say to themselves, the Lord will do nothing, either good or bad. Their wealth will be plundered and their houses laid waste. They will build houses but not inhabit them, and plant vineyards but never drink their wine. The great day of the Lord is near and coming quickly. So, again, this is, guys, do you not understand, I don't know. I'm just not 100% sure how else I can try and make this clear, Guys, do you not understand, I don't know. I'm, so, yeah, let's look at what else we got going on here. We also have Zephaniah 14. Or, I'm sorry. That was for... verse 14. I meant to say Zechariah. So Zechariah 14. Behold, a day of the Lord is coming when your plunder will be divided in your presence. For I will gather all the nations for battle against Jerusalem, and the city will be captured, the houses looted, and the women ravished. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be removed from the city. Then the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle. On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and on the Mount of Olives will be split in two, from east to west, forming a great valley with half the mountain moving to the north and half to the south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it will extend to Azal. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and the holy ones with him. Right? So, again, that could be, referencing 70 AD. Right? Because when was Zechariah? Yeah, that was 520 BC. So, it definitely is speaking in reference to the future, a future happening, right? But again, it doesn't say coming soon. It doesn't say it will happen soon. It does say a day of the Lord is coming. But, again, in that day, and, if they use that kind of language, it denotes it's not happening right away. But this is a prophecy for what's going to happen. And then let's look at Psalm 18. So for the choir master of David, the servant of the Lord, who sang this song to the Lord on the day of the Lord, had delivered him from the hand of all his enemies, from the hand of Saul. He said, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. Right? And again, when people say, Jesus named Peter the Pope, the first Pope, right? Because he said that he made him the rock. Well, no. The name Petros means piece of rock, and that's why it says, "And on this rock I will lay the foundation for my ecclesia." It's talking about the Lord is the rock, okay? But anyway, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold, I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, so I shall be saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, the torrents of chaos overwhelmed me, the cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, I cried to my God for help. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry for his help reached his ears. And then the earth shook and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains trembled. They were shaken because he burned with anger. Smoke rose from his nostrils, and consuming fire came from his mouth. Glowing coals blazed forth. He parted the heavens and came down with dark clouds beneath his feet. He mounted a cherub and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his hiding place, and storm clouds a canopy around him. From the brightness of his presence, his clouds advanced, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord thundered from heaven, the voice of the Most High resounded, hailstones and coals of fire. He shot his arrows and scattered the foes, he hurled lightning and routed them. The channels of the sea disappeared, and the foundations of the world were exposed at your rebuke, O Lord, and the blast of breath of your nostrils. Now, here's the thing. Did that all really happen, right? Because, I mean, literally, he's saying, yeah, no, this actually happened. Like, he's recalling what happened in the past, but we know that those things didn't really happen. Guys, it's apocalyptic language. It's hyperbole, but it's beautiful. Again, I'm not saying that this is like anything bad. I'm not saying, oh, how dare they be misleading or anything like that. Like, no, this is beautiful language. But we have to realize what it really is too. We have to take it for what it actually is. And again, Psalm 104. So, bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. He wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent, laying the beams of his chambers in the waters above, making the clouds his chariot, walking on the wings of the wind. So again, the waters above, we're in a firmament, but anyway, he makes the winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. He set the earth on its foundations, never to be moved. You covered, which again, interesting, right? Because scientism wants to tell us that the earth moves and revolves around the sun and all this stuff. But anyway, you covered it with the deep like a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At your rebuke, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder, they hurried away. The mountains arose and the valleys sank to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross, that they may never again cover the earth. He sends forth springs in the valleys. They flow between the mountains. They give drink to every beast in the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds of the air nest beside the springs. They sing among the branches. He waters the mountains from his chambers. The earth is satisfied by the fruit of his works. He makes the grass grow for the livestock and provides crops for man to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. Wine that gladdens the heart of man, oil that makes his face to shine, and bread that sustains his heart. The trees of the Lord have their fill, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted, where the birds build their nests. The stork makes her home in the cypresses. The high mountains are for the wild goats, the cliffs a refuge for the rock badgers. He made the moon to mark the seasons. The sun knows when to set. Right? You bring darkness, and it becomes night, when all the beasts of the forest prowl. The young lions roar for their prey and seek their food from God. The sun rises and they withdraw. They lie down in their dens. Man goes forth to his work and to his labor until evening. How many are your works, O Lord? In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Here is the sea, vast and wide, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things both great and small. There the ships pass, and Leviathan, which you formed to frolic there. All creatures look to you. You give them their food in due season. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. When you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they die and return to dust. When you send your spirit, they are created. When you renew the face, and you renew the face of the earth. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. He looks on the earth, and it trembles. He touches the mountains, and they smolder. I will sing to the Lord all my life. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. May my meditation be pleasing to him, for I rejoice in the Lord. May sinners vanish from the earth, and the wicked be no more. Bless the Lord, O my soul. Hallelujah. Again, he looks on the earth and it trembles. He touches the mountains and they smolder, right? This is apocalyptic language, hyperbole, whatever you want to call it. And then we have one last one here. Habakkuk. And we've got... Let's see. Yeah, giving woe to the Chaldeans, right? So woe to him, woe to him. 3 woes, 4 woes, 5 woes. I think he gives 5 woes to them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, he gives 5 woes to the Chaldeans, right? But again, so let's take a look here at Jeremiah 4. So Jeremiah is a prophet that was warning everybody about the coming destruction of the first temple, okay? But in Jeremiah 4, we have another passage that talks about like apocalyptic language. So let's find this here. Okay, so in 23, right? So I looked at the earth, and it was formless and void. I looked to the heavens, and they had no light. I looked at the mountains, and behold, they were quaking, all the hills were swaying. I looked, and no man was left, all the birds of the air had fled. I looked, and the fruitful land was a desert. All its cities were torn down before the Lord, before his fierce anger. For this is what the Lord says, the whole land will be desolate, but I will not finish its destruction. Therefore, the earth will mourn, and the heavens above will grow dark. I have spoken, I have planned, and I will not relent or turn back. Every city flees at the sound of the horseman and archer. They enter the thickets and climb among the rocks. Every city is abandoned, no inhabitant is left. And you, O devastated one, what will you do, though you dress yourself in scarlet, though you adorn yourself with gold jewelry, though you enlarge your eyes with paint? You adorn yourself in vain. Your lovers despise you. They want to take your life. For I hear a cry like a woman in labor, a cry of anguish like one bearing her first child. The cry of the daughter of Zion, gasping for breath, stretching out her hands to say, woe is me, for my soul faints before the murderers. So again, this is apocalyptic language, right? Saying that like the heavens will grow dark, the earth will mourn. It's actually very interesting that it's talking about Jerusalem being clothed in scarlet again here. Gold jewelry, painting of the eyelids. These are things that are spoken of in Enoch as well. But yeah. So what Jeremiah is doing here, though, right? I looked at the earth and it was formless and void, and I looked at the heavens and they had no light. Well, he's referencing Genesis, right? Applying the language to the decreation of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem's going to be like how the earth was in the beginning, formless and void. There was no heavens. There's no light in the heavens. Um, and again, that's exactly what Revelation is talking about in Revelation 21 and 22, right? So let me just go ahead and let's draw that parallel, so that way you guys can understand. Right? So we see that beheld da da da. Well, the form of things have passed away. Blah blah blah. Let's see. So yeah, it's talking about the New Jerusalem coming down, and all the gates, the apostles, the Lamb, the River of Life. I mean, yeah. So you can kind of see what this is, how it's playing off of that same thing, right? Um, and again, the covenantal language, right, of like Israelitic language, they understood that, you know, the heavens and the earth are in reference to the temple, and they're being desolated through an end time local judgment that sounds as if the destruction of the globe or the end of the world history is happening. But no, they're talking about the area, right? The guests, the region. Um, so I mean, again, um, when we're looking at like Matthew, right? And we're looking. Let's go back to Matthew 23. So this is when um, he, Jesus gives the seven woes, right? So then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples. The scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat, so practice and observe everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, burdensome loads and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. All their deeds are done for men to see. They broaden their phylacteries. Uh, and lengthen their tassels. They love the places of honor at banquets, the chief seats in the synagogues, the greetings in the marketplaces, and the title of rabbi by which they are addressed. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth your father, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Christ. The greatest among you shall be your servant. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let in those who wish to enter. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You traverse the land and sea to win a single convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. Woe to you, blind guides! You say, if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing, but if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. You blind fools! Which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes it sacred? And if you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing, but if anyone swears by the gift on it, he is bound by his oath. You blind men! Which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes it sacred? So then, he who swears by the altar swears by it and everything on it. And he who swears by the temple swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and by the one who sits on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You pay tithes of mint, dill, and cumin, but you have disregarded the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides! You strain out a gnat but swallow a camel. So good. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish so that the outside may become clean as well. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones of every kind of impurity. In the same way, on the outside you appear to be righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, and you say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partners with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So you testify against yourselves that you are the sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your sin of your fathers. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape the sentence of hell? Right? Again, that's the Gehenna, the Tartarus, Sheol, whatever you want to call it. Because of this, I'm sending you prophets and wise men and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and others you will flog in your synagogues and persecute in town after town. And so upon you will come all the righteous bloodshed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I tell you, all these things will come upon this generation. Right? Now, what he's saying is, he's not saying that the iniquity of the father falls upon the son, right? Because it does say that fill up then the measure of the sin of your fathers. But what he's saying is, it's not because your fathers killed the prophets, but it's because he's sending them more prophets and wise men and teachers, and they're going to kill them and crucify them and flog them and persecute them. So that way they're not going to do any different than their fathers. That's why they're going to be judged. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those sent to her, how often have I longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were unwilling. Look, your house is left to you desolate, like the abomination of desolation. For I tell you that you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So as Jesus left the temple and was walking away, his disciples came up to him to point out its buildings. Do you see all these things? He replied. Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another, every one will be thrown down. While Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming of the end of the age? Yahusha answered, see to it that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. These things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. When they will deliver you over to be persecuted and killed, and you will be hated by all nations because of my then they will deliver you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. At that time many will fall away and will betray and hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and mislead many. Because of the multiplication of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who perseveres to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world. Well, again, that word, oikumene, Roman Empire, as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. The end of what? The end of the age, right? So the end of the age, what's going to come? The end of the age, right? The end, persevering to the end of the age. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination of desolation, described by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop come down to retrieve anything from his house. Let no one in the field return for his cloak. How miserable those days will be for pregnant and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not occur in the winter or on the Sabbath, for at that time there will be great tribulation, unmatched from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be seen again. If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, there is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders that would deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you in advance. So if they tell you, here he is in the wilderness, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Now, interestingly enough, this word here, lightning, actually probably shouldn't be lightning, but it means like brightness. You know what I mean? And so what this is kind of like referencing is the rising of the sun, right? So just as the rising of the sun comes from the east and goes as far as the west, right? Because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the tribulation in those days, again, we're getting back to the apocalyptic language. The sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. At that time, the Son of Man, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds in heaven and with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call. They will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its branches become tender and sprout leaves, you know that the summer is near. So also when you see all these things, you will know that he is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away. Okay, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. I mean, guys, I have a question for literally for all you futurists out there. How do you like? I'm sorry, but this right here, this one line completely rebukes and defeats the entirety of being a futurist. Like, if you don't think that revelation already happened, then how do you know what I mean? Like, how do you rectify this? If you think there's a great tribulation, and it says immediately after the great tribulation, these things are going to happen, right? Immediately after the tribulation, that's when this apocalyptic language is going to be coming, the judgment, right, and the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. So you can't get past this. You really can't. There's absolutely no way you can. But anyway, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. No one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. And it was in the days of, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they were oblivious until the flood came and swept them all away. So will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day on which your Lord will come. But understand this. If the homeowner had known in which watch of the night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. For this reason you must also be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of his household, to give the others their food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says in his heart, my master will be away a long time, and he begins to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day he does not expect, at an hour he does not anticipate. Then he will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and the gnashing of teeth. Alright. So, again, decreation language, apocalyptic language, the heavens and the earth passing away, right? Now, heaven and earth may be a way of referring to Jerusalem or its temple, right? We know that. And as far as for how like the temple, right? So how does the temple kind of like reference heaven and earth, the inner court and the outer court of the temple? Well, it actually goes with the creation theory, right? So let's look at the days of creation, okay? And we'll actually reference outside of Genesis for this one, for day 1, right? So in Psalm 104, like we just talked about, right? So he wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent. Well, if we look here, in the first tabernacle, right, the first temple, it was portable. They could bring it with them. They're able to carry the Ark of the Covenant, right? But if we look at this here, you are to make curtains of goat hair for the tent over the tabernacle, 11 curtains in all. Each of the 11 curtains is to be the same size, 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. So we've got that parallel, okay, right? Day one, the heavens are created and stretched out like a curtain, right? And then we've got day two, the firmament. So if we look in Genesis 1:2, now the earth was formless and void, just like Jeremiah was referencing back to, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Right? Now if we look at Exodus, back at Exodus again, 26. And hang the veil from the clasp and place the ark of the testimony behind the veil. So the veil will separate the holy place from the most holy place. So the temple veil being like the firmaments, right? Then you had the waters below the firmament in the days of creation. And then in Exodus 30, look at this. You are to make a bronze basin with a bronze stand for washing. Set it between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it. So the bronze basin, right? The waters below the firmament. And then you've got light, right? In Genesis 1:14, and God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to distinguish between the day and the night, and let them be signs to mark the seasons and days and years. And let them serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth." And it was so. And then if you look here in Exodus 25:31. Then you are to make a lampstand out of pure hammered gold. It shall be made of one piece, including its base and shaft, its cups and its buds and petals. So again, it's speaking of the lights, right? The lampstand, lights made in Genesis. And then on the fifth day of creation in Genesis, you've got the animals, right? And so on the fifth day, God said, let the waters teem with living creatures, let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the sky. Right? And then in Exodus 25:20, and the cherubim are to have wings that spread upward, overshadowing the mercy seat. The cherubim are to face each other, looking towards the mercy seat, right? So the mercy seat, the Ark of the Covenant, okay? It's got the cherubim with their wings, kind of like referencing the birds of the sky, you know. And then you've got men being made on the sixth day in Genesis, right? So 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Actually, better than that, it says, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. He's talking about Yahusha, right? So there's referencing to Christ in the Old Testament, right there at the beginning. But then let's look at Exodus 28. Now have your brother Aaron brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, to serve me as priests. Make holy garments for your brother Aaron to give him glory and splendor. So again, bring the man, right? Men as the priesthood being brought into the temple, just like the creation of man. And then on the seventh day, you've got the cessation, the blessing, and the completion, right? So if we go to Genesis 2, on the seventh day, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array, and by the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing, so on that day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because on that day he rested from all the work of creation that he had accomplished. Okay? So you got the cessation, and the blessing, and the completion. So the cessation on the first one, the blessing on the third one, the completion right here. Right? It was done. Now, if we look at Exodus 39, and we look at 32. So all the work for the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, was completed. The Israelites did everything just as the Lord had commanded. So, okay, the secession, it was all done. And then we look at 30, 43, right? So the Israelites had done all the work just as the Lord had commanded Moses, and Moses inspected all the work and saw they had accomplished it just as the Lord had commanded. So Moses blessed them. So it's completed. It's done. The blessing. So do you understand like how that parallel is there and why they considered the temple to be heaven and the heavens and the earth? So again, this is literally just straight covenantal language. I think again, it's poignant. It's beautiful. It's something that's far beyond just being like a random happenstance or like, oh, like this is just really good writing. Like, no, this is not. No, this is much more than that. This is a parallel that only could be brought into fruition from God Himself. So, anyway, that's all I got for this one, guys. I'm just trying to bring more knowledge every day. Hopefully, this makes sense to you guys. Hopefully, you can understand and it starts to make sense. You're like, oh, hey, you know what? No, like this actually, yeah, it makes a good point. You know what I mean? That's really what it's all about. Just wanted to share the knowledge. So, all right, guys. Until next time. Later. You know what I mean? That's really what it's all about. Just wanted to